Welcome back to the Krown Crypto channel. Wishing you a happy and healthy start on this sunny Friday morning over here from Dubai. Absolutely sunburnt to a crisp now, but it's all good because I have some sunscreen. I've actually invested in some sunscreen, so things will work out, I do suspect. Anyways, there is plenty to talk about today, of course, with yesterday's CPI data coming out, which is going to really and drastically kind of expedite things in the next few days, I do think. So I do think that there is a major setup actually right in front of our face, probably today actually. And with that in mind, there is also going to be a bigger setup likely in the next week to come. So we need to juxtapose the short term against the long term in this case, and I'm going to hopefully make this as simple as possible. And because you only get few times in life to do this, critical warning to the Bitcoin bootlaws of the world. You better beware because the Dubai boys are coming for your coins right now. And what do I mean by that? Well, short-term time frames, probably going to be looking at a bit of an ebb and a flow, we'll say. Anyways, before we get into that, I should let you know that the premium features on the Krown trading application are now live. You can find them over here on the dashboard, and the link is in the description below. And I would suggest you click the Learn More button over here on the left-hand pane, as it's going to let you know exactly what to expect with it, and if it's for you or not for you. At some point, not at some point, but next week when I'm back in my usual battle station, I will be recording a full-on video, talking about all the features of the application and whatnot. But for right now, that's going to have to suffice because I want to get right down and deep and dirty into this data. So let's start off right here. Essentially, the chart of the day, daily Bitcoin. What do we see? We do see, oh no, the dreaded hidden bearish divergence right there, formulating on the daily. That is. So this is on CME, by the way, and we also do see. I wouldn't say this is an extreme read on daily BBWP, but it is getting to the highs of that we've seen essentially since October, early October, that is. So ultimately, is Bitcoin likely to pull back in the short-term timeframes and fulfill the gap to the downside, somewhere around about 41,000 to 41,500? Yeah, definitely possible, especially coming into Monday where we have that we have an emergency Fed meeting. It's like they're taking notes from the crypto YouTubers. Emergency Fed meeting. Watch out! It's critical warning. We're gonna raise rates, right? So here's the thing. Coming into a meeting like this, the market very likely does price in the worst case scenario as far as expectations go, because that is the expectation, right? That's the anticipation of the market that the Fed is going to come in and probably raise rates a little bit earlier, maybe stop supporting, or maybe not providing as much liquidity to the Fed balance sheet as well. So what does that essentially mean for markets? That essentially means that markets probably do, provide a little bit of an ebb and flow coming into that Monday meeting, and then, it doesn't even matter what they say in that meeting. What matters is the expectation versus reality. If they come out and they say something like, hey, we thought about it, but we're going to continue doing what we're doing because inflation is transitory, so all good, right? Anyways, if something like that happens, you'll probably see markets buoyed back up. Ultimately, I do think that this market does trade higher, but in the short-term timeframes, I do think that there is a greater threat of a pullback here. So here's a key critical information for today. If we do see any sort of a daily closure, basically here or lower, and confirm this hidden bearish divergence, yes, I'd be looking at that as very, 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 very likely to trade back down and fulfill that gap somewhere around about 41,000 to 41,500. That's also going to be in line with the daily stochastic momentum also turning down simultaneously, with any sort of a closure today below 45,450. Again, this is like the first time that we've really even seen it turn down basically since mid-January, and the first time that we've really seen it turn down from the same area since October 20 highs, actually, which was all the way back at about $67,000. So ultimately, I am looking for a short-term corrective move, but the long-term, as we identified yesterday on what I'm going to refer to as the chart of the day, if you will, I actually do still look for Bitcoin to trade higher from here. So let's go over the signal once again, and then we'll swing back around maybe into the lower-term timeframes and cover them up a little bit better. But ultimately, what do we see right here? We see three things. We see one, 3-day MACD crossing to the upside. All just blindly playing 3-day MACD crosses to the upside in the past, basically in the past couple of years, has been phenomenally well, actually. For example, the last time we saw a 3-day MACD cross the upside was October 4th of last year. That was coming out of this $40,000 base before Bitcoin went all the way to $69,000, a great number right there. The time before that was back on over here in July, late July bear trap from $30,000 all the way up to about $53,000 unabated. And then we saw another little runola right here, actually started quite literally in February of last year. So about a year ago, and that led into this move from about $35,000 to $65,000 prior all-time highs. Time before that was right in over here in October of 2020, before going from about $11,500 to $20,000, and then onwards and upwards from there. Time before that was in here in July of 2020 as well, before about a 25% move to the upside. Time before that was coming out of the flu dump. Time before that was coming out of the December 2019 slump, before a nice 60% rally plus, or actually about 60% right there. And then we had one full-on failure, I'd say, which was right here in October 2019, where it crossed the upside and got absolutely no continuation from that cross the upside. All of the signals with that signature have basically been pretty damn good. And I think we also had one maybe over here in 2018 in the heat of the bear market, where we did see not the greatest signal as well. I'd say that this one over here from August actually did catch a little bit of a bid. I mean, that was okay. But this one over here, very, very minimal. So I'd say that really was more or less a failure. So very, very high hit rate on that alone. And that will be maintaining its upside posturing as long as Bitcoin's above 38,322. Also, as important as that, we do see that anytime Bitcoin's essentially regained the white 20 simple moving average on this time frame as well, in conjunction with the 3-day MACD cross the upside, well, those have also had a greater confluence. So we could have avoided some of those lesser hit rates those misses, thus increasing the hit rate by just kind of employing that tactic as well. Going back and over here, seeing both an open and closure above the 20 simple. As you can see, over here on those failed signals, we never saw that. Over here, we actually did see a couple. So this one was like just a full-on failure, but we can take it maybe even one more step than that, which we will in a second. And we can look at the PMAR right here. And the PMAR, as you can see, is, well, I've already kind of done it for you, but anytime that we have seen the PMAR, in this case, on the 3-day time frame, trade above the moving average on it. And by the way, for reference, my settings are this: PMAR right there, okay, 20 VWMA, 2000 look back, and 35 on the VWMA for the signal MA. There you go. All right, I know I'm going to get questions about that, so might as well just do it right there. Anytime that we've seen that reclaim the moving average on it, well, you can see on the chart right here that pretty much all of those have been some very, very nice upside moves. The only one that did not work out is actually one that I didn't include right here. So, I'm going to include this one because it was relevant and it was a full-on failure, and it was right here, also in line with the MACD signal and also in line with the 20 simple. So I do think that does warrant consideration. It's not perfect, obviously, but a very high hit rate in the last about 3 years now, which is, something that I think deserves a bit of recognition. So this does not mean that Bitcoin can't come back down and fill the gap and even back test the last 3-day open, which is your $41,500 to $41,000 region. That's completely fine. Bitcoin does that. Ultimately, I do look for Bitcoin to trade higher from here, probably up towards probably north of $50,000, but this very likely takes some time as well. You'll notice that all of these signals take about a month for them to really play out before they really start to reach, I wouldn't say like their final destination, but a critical destination before a more prolonged sideways and corrective move after that. So you can reference this one over here, starts October, ends in about middle of November. This one over here starts in late July, ends in early September. This one over here starts in March, ends in middle of April, let's say, and so on and so forth. So I do think that deserves a bit of consideration. Ultimately, I do look for Bitcoin to trade sideways and up from here with maybe a bit of a short-term downside move if the daily hidden bearish divergence does get confirmed, which, by the way, with Bitcoin trading above here now, 43,300, as price action is obviously moving while I'm recording this, we actually no longer have it. So that is, worth consideration. So if we were to go on to the short-term timeframes, how else could we look at this as a bit of a, confirmation? Well, in this case, it's the same thing as what we had before, right? Bitcoin, above $45,000 on a 4-hour closure. Good. I'm calling upside continuation first to $48,000, maybe even $50,000, somewhere around the 618 Fibonacci retracement on the macro range. That is going all the way from 29,500 low to $69,000 highs, or all-time highs in this case. Other than that, if Bitcoin does not, well, doing something like this in the short term, where it gets maybe another short-term move back up somewhere around, low $44,000. I think that's, quite likely, regardless of whether Bitcoin's bullish or bearish right here in the short term, and then maybe comes back down and takes out all of the late longers, as the market loves to do, right? Coming down somewhere around that 41 to 41,500-ish region. So ultimately, ultimately that's kind of what I'm looking at right now. I don't really have a reason to invalidate preps what I would call the 3-day long-term bullishness here, as long as Bitcoin is above about $40,000 on a daily closing basis. And to give Mr. Mark B his little shout out, Mr. Mark B, let's talk about some goddamn phantom divergence, sir. We got it right here. Now, this, does this count as regular divergence, or sorry, regular hidden bullish divergence, or regular phantom, or not regular, but phantom hidden bullish divergence? Jesus Christ, man, that's getting confusing. You can kind of make the argument both ways, but technically speaking, I consider this phantom simply because your last low in this series over the last half a year, going back to July, the last low in comparison to this low was not the July low, so it was actually over here in September. So for me, that kind of negates the traditional way of defining it. So I just call anything that's not traditional phantom in this case, but there's no real standardized definition, which kind of makes it difficult. Anyways, to really wrap it up here, very, 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 very short-term timeframes, very likely does trade a little bit sideways and up, probably back up towards, mid $44,000 territory, assuming no closures above $45,000 on a 4-hour time frame or greater. I do look for Bitcoin. I just think it's a little more likely to probably come down overall and fulfill that gap, maybe a little bit lower, probably scare the shit out of everyone as well, get super bearish yet again, and then perhaps trudge, upwards and onwards from there. But ultimately, I do put a lot of weight on that 3-day chart that we looked at earlier, and some of the underlying market dynamics over here as well. We do see that global open interest is turning down, yes, but we didn't really hit a critical area here, so I'm not looking for like a major correction off of this. Just maybe like just maybe a few percent correction rather than like a 20% correction, which is what we typically do get when we get a daily lower high plus a critical read above 13.5 billion, let's say. That's kind of what I'm looking for. On top of that, we do see, or what do we see on funding rates? We see, positive funding rates ever so slightly, not really much of a concern right there. Fear and greed index, after getting back to neutrality, you kind of expect the market to have a bit of a sentiment correction as well. So in this case, longer term though, I do think that it deserves repeating. However, that the knuckle over here and the SOPAR do suggest that we're probably looking at more of a potentially a major low. It is certainly possible here, as we do see a bit of a positive divergence in this case between knuckle and price action, meaning that knuckle made lower lows while price action made higher lows, comparison to the summer lows right here. And SOPAR, we did see anytime that we see extremes on this, typically are looking at a major pivot on the market. The only one that didn't really work out was our current ultimate at $69,000. Other than that, the last bear trap at $30,000 in the summer worked. The actual low over the summer worked. The prior ultimate at 65,000 worked, and a couple of other major highs as well along the way. So I thought that all of that was rather interesting. Again, just kind of a long-winded way of kind of saying the same thing that we've been saying for the past, few days here almost. Bitcoin above 45, good. Bitcoin below 42.5. That's probably a little bit more of an actionable way of judging the downside in this case. Personally speaking, I think that you see something like this in the short term. You see a bit of a short-term bounces back up into the shallow 44s, maybe even mid 44s, assuming no closure above $45,000, probably does trade down into that meeting on Monday, somewhere around about 41 to 41,500, and then assuming that things aren't as bad as what people are probably looking for, then maybe resume the uptrend with targets up towards $48,000 to $50,000. Going back on over here, I didn't even bother looking at the lower term timeframes, but might as well, I guess. It's only 13 minutes in this video. 12-hour stochastic momentum is going to be turning down below $45,000. 6-hour is probably down as well, below 44.7. 4-hour is down below 44.8. 3-hour is, and I sound like a moron, $45,000. Bi-hourly is doing what? Is below 43.5, and hourly is probably up right now, I guess. And it is up right now, 43 even. So very, very short-term timeframes, maybe a bit of a bounce, but most of the other timeframes are kind of on the same side as each other. So suggesting a bit of sideways here at best. Maybe in this case, if you really want to use, you could probably use this area right here, 42.6 or 42.5 as an hourly closure for that next move to the downside. Until then, a little bit more likely to bounce in the very, very short term, and then probably puts in a bit of a distributive high right there, and then comes down, and then we set up for next week. And that's when I look for the 3-day time frame to take over, which would be invalidated. Very, very key critical component, which would be invalidated below $40,000 on a daily closure, or a full hour below 39.3. Until one of those two things happens, well, probably more like, I do kind of respect the long term. So hopefully that was helpful. I'm gonna be signing off right now. Take care and see you hopefully very soon.